So in this video, we're finally getting to Zach's advanced respawning system that he described earlier, that he said we can find in so many 80s style arcade games. Zach, if you could spend just a second and go back over how this respawning thing works.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call it advanced. I just call it conventional.
Okay, conventional.
It's just kind of the way they work.
Okay.
So your ship's
it's advanced compared to what we've got now.
That's true. That's true. Well, see, what's going to happen is somebody like Buzz will be playing, and he will get hit by an asteroid, and he's going to explode. See, like if I were playing, we wouldn't even need this system.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so you're playing, you explode. Now, instead of just popping back up in the middle, you're going to slide into play. So it's almost like another ship flies into view.
Okay.
Now, the catch there, like the next problem that we're going to solve, because the whole thing is here, we're solving several problems at once. The next problem is that what if you get that perfectly timed asteroid that's right there, so that right as you slide into view, he just smacks you and blows you up. You get like the spawn kill effect.
Right.
And that's not fair. You don't want that to happen.
Right.
So you need to be invincible for a few seconds right as you first come in to kind of get your bearings and get ready to start playing one more time.
Okay.
However, the player needs to know that they're invincible, and classically, the way you would tell a player they're invincible, aside from music like do 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 do, you'd blink.
Okay.
So all in all, what's going to happen? You'll blow up, and then you'll slide into view. As soon as you're done sliding in, you'll blink for a few seconds to let the player know they're invincible, and then a few seconds later, that stops, and you're back into the original game.
Okay. Well, let's start out by jumping over into our code. So let me jump into player. So let's see. At the moment, when we die, we were calling upon, so on trigger enter, we were calling on the destroy ship coroutine, which took care of what we needed to.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The nice thing about what you're wanting here, Zach, is that we get to introduce state. And
Okay.
State is something that we will be working with heavily in the future with more sophisticated games. In this particular case, there's definitely a few different states that we're going to be in. And let me just comment this out as we discuss them. First of all, we're going to be playing. Having a good time, shooting stuff, destroying asteroids. All right.
Right. Having a good time.
Now, the asteroid hits us. We're going to explode. So I'm going to set this up as a state because during the explosion phase, we're going to instantiate an explosion and we're going to vanish.
Right, we're going to hide the ship because it's not like the ship really goes away.
Right.
This is all sleight of hand.
But we're invisible, and then but we shouldn't be able to shoot.
You pull away input from the player.
So we're going to pull away input from the player because there's another state, and that is the invincible state, where in the invincible state we can shoot, we can move, but it's not a regular playing state because the enemy cannot destroy us, but we can play and shoot.
Gotcha.
So these are the three different states. So what we're going to do is create an enum. So we're going to create our own type, if you will, that we can use for representing state. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to do an enum. I'm just going to call it state. And the states I'm going to give this guy are going to be playing, not player, explosion, and finally invincible, like such. Now, to turn around and use this, what I'm going to do is create a private variable, or private data member in this case,
Right.
of type state, since that is what we just defined, and I'm going to call it state. And I'm going to go ahead and initialize it. So I'm going to declare and initialize, because when we start off, when this is instantiated, if you will, this class, we are playing.
Sure.
Right?
So playing will be kind of like the default value.
That's right. So I'm going to do state dot, and then I can choose from which state I'm in.
Nice.
So I'm going to do playing. So now when we start out, we're in a playing state. Fantastic. So let's talk about how things will be a bit different in update and on explosion. So right now, inside of update, we are allowing our player to move the ship, seeing if we need to screen warp, and seeing if they've hit the space bar to fire. But do we do this on all conditions? Let's think about this, on all states. When we are playing, do we do all these things?
Yes.
When we're in a playing state.
Yes, we do.
When we are in an explosion state, do we do all these things?
We do none of those things,
We do none of these things. That's correct. And when we are in an invincible state, do we do these things?
Well, the answer is yes, but I don't think we fire. Well, I guess you could.
You could, yeah.
It's one of those things. It's just like, do you want the player to still be able to shoot while they're invincible? I think that'd really be a matter of choice.
So in this case, we're going to keep things really simple. So let's just go with, you can do all of this when you're in an invincible state. So at this point, we've determined that everything in here is going to take place if we are playing or invincible. It's just not going to happen when we are exploding.
We're too busy exploding.
So let's just wrap all of this up in a nice if statement. And we can say that if state is not equal to state.explosion.
That makes sense.
And then I'm going to jump down and put an open curly brace and then come all the way down here to the bottom of update and put a closing and let Visual Studio indent everything for me. So this means that if we are exploding, we cannot move and we cannot shoot.
Okay.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and jump down to the next area. On trigger, enter. So this is when we're dealing with death and destruction. We've been hit by an asteroid. So when can an asteroid kill us? Can an asteroid kill us when we are in a playing state?
Sure.
What about when we are in an explosion state?
No,
because we're gone and we're not there to be destroyed.
And really, the only way for that to happen would be if we had more than just one enemy, because you'd have to have one right on top of another.
What about?
But theoretically,
what about when we are in an invincible state?
No, you're invincible.
You're invincible,
obviously.
So another very simple if statement can be wrapped around this guy. And in this particular case, all we need to do is say that if, we don't even have to put that in there. We can just add on to this if statement.
Yeah, because you've already got that one. Check and see what hit you.
So if the other object, the guy that hit us, if his tag is enemy,
and if the state equals state.playing.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
If state equals state.playing, then let's decrement our lives because we just got hit and we were allowed to be hit. And then take care of resetting our enemy and then calling upon destroy ship. So far, so good. The next thing we need to do is adjust our destroy ship to accommodate everything else we've talked about.
Yeah, well, we needed to basically turn invisible, slide off the screen so that it can be moved back on, and then as soon as it gets on, it needs to blink for a while.
So all sorts of things that we need to do. There's also a lot of things that you just mentioned that I would like to have private data members that I can use to describe these things so that I don't have to plug in numbers everywhere. I mean, I've already got numbers plugged in that I'm not a big fan of, like 1.5 right here.
Sure.
It would be a lot nicer to have variable names or field names in here that represent exactly what it is we're looking at. So in this particular case, 1.5, that is the time in which our ship is invisible. So for example, we can come back up here and let's start setting up a few private data members. So that would be a float, and I'm going to give it a descriptive name, something like ship invisible time. And it was what, 1.5 seconds?
Yes, sir.
So let's set that. I'm going to copy this guy, scroll back down. So here we are. Wait for how long? Well, we're going to wait for the ship's invisible time. So that makes a lot of sense.
Sure, no, absolutely. Now you don't have to dig down through code. I don't get to code very often in anything that compiles, but I do a lot of scripting. And anytime I've got numbers like this, I always try to keep them closely together up near the top of my code.
So it's very quick to go in and make changes if need be. Yep. Also, and the other big thing is if somebody else begins working with your code at some point later in time and you have just numbers plugged in all over the place, they may wonder, well, what does this number mean?
Yeah, you've got to go back through and read what the code's doing to even figure it out.
So there's several other things that we can represent with fields here, such as once we get destroyed, we're invisible. Now we're going to at some point become invisible after become visible after our ship invisible time expires. And we're going to slide on the screen. So it would be nice if we can control the rate in which we move back on the screen. So we're going to do that with a private float ship move on to screen speed.
That's a long variable name.
Yep, but it's very descriptive.
Sure.
So with that, so the move on to speed. Now this is how far we're going to be moving over 1 second time because obviously we're going to be multiplying against time.delta time, so keep that in mind. I'm going to take this guy and set him to a value of 5. And we can adjust, as needed. I've played with these values before we began recording, and these are values that I liked.
Okay.
The next thing is going to be, so he slides on the screen.
Now he's got a blink.
He's got a blink. So now let's set up a private float that is going to be a blink rate. So this is how fast is he going to blink on and off in seconds. And I'm going to set this to 0.1. Okay, so 0.1 seconds on, then 0.1 seconds off. So we get 0.2 seconds, and we'll be making a full blink cycle, if you will. Next thing, there are various ways that we can go about having this guy blink.
Sure.
Different types of systems we can set up. I'm going to be taking advantage of the ability to yield execution within a
coroutine.
A coroutine. And this is very powerful here. And I just felt that this was a really cool place to show this, where we're going to stay in a loop, executing the same code over and over and over, but we're also going to apply a yield to it as well.
Gotcha.
So the way I'm going to do this, a very simple system, is I'm just going to set up a field that allows us to specify how many times we're going to blink, and I'm going to set up another field that's going to simply keep track of how many times we have blinked.
I gotcha.
So private, and these are going to be ints. So this will be number of times to blink.
So instead of saying something like, I want you to blink for 2.5 seconds, you're going to say each blink will take 1/10 of a second, and we're just going to count the blinks.
You got it.
Gotcha.
Okay. So then from here, let's create the other one that I was talking about, which is the blink count. And I'm just going to let him be initialized to 0. So I'm not going to initialize him here. So now that we have these guys set up, you could simply say that all of these fields are used to describe the spawning of a player.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's go ahead and save and then jump down to our destroy ship. Very first thing we need to do, let's set our state. When we come in here, first thing that happens is an instantiation of our explosion prefab. So right before this, it looks like a fantastic place for us to jump in and tell it that the state is now equal to
explosion or
state.explosion. So now we're exploding. Outstanding. So let's see what happens if I save and we test it out, because we know right now that when update runs, if we are in an explosion state, we cannot fire, we cannot move. So if we're in any other state, we'll do these things, but if we're in an explosion state, we can't. So we should lose that ability. So let's run in here, hit play, and so running around, I get hit, fire, I can't fire now. I can't move.
All inputs are stripped down.
So perfect. That's working very well. So let's go ahead and jump back over here.
So the trick now is basically that by the time everything's over, we're going to have to switch back to a playing state.
That's right. Now we have our off-screen move. I believe that's if we jump back down here. We are telling this guy to looking. Where are we moving him off-screen at? So transform position Y, new position. Give me 1 second. I am looking through code. Some of this doing just by the very seat of my pants. Well, right now, I am taking this guy and transforming him to 0, 0, 0. I'm just transforming him back to the center right here with this guy, but I'm not moving him off screen. I need to move him off screen.
Right.
So let's take a look at that. What do we need to move? And my apologies. For just a second there, I was thinking I was already moving him off screen. Getting ahead of myself here. Let's grab him. And right now we're at, I'm just going to clean this up, say negative 3.2. All right. So I want to move him off screen. So let's move him down. And I'm looking down at the game panel. And
right about there.
So negative 5-ish or so, negative 5.5. Just give him a little bit more room to play with coming up. That looks good. So let's jump back over here, and this is going to need to be changed, because here we were simply keeping whatever position we were at in regards to Y, which was the negative 3.2, simply keep it. So in this case, I'm going to put negative 5.5. This isn't going to be a number that's hard to figure out because it deals with a position. We're simply saying it right there.
Sure.
So now we are moving off screen, excellent, and staying there. So if I save this and run again, let's see what happens when we get killed. We come over here, get killed, we're moved off screen, but we can't get hit anymore, we can't fire, and we cannot move. But we did not see ourselves on the play screen. So now we just need to set up the logic that's going to have this guy slide back on screen, and then we'll worry about blinking. from this point forward, everything is going to take place in this part, the true part of our if statement right there. Because if we don't have any ships left, of course we need to load out of here with our lost screen. So I'm going to go ahead and block this in because we're going to end up with more than one line of code. Now again, I want to keep this very simple. The first thing that I want to have happen is him turn back on, because we want him to slide up, and we need him visible when he's sliding
so we
up.
know he slides in, yeah.
And the way I'm going to have him slide up, it's a very simple approach, is I'm going to use a while loop. And I'm going to say while the transform.position.y is less than or equal to, or we can just say less than, but that's good enough, negative 3.2. Okay? So while he's less than or equal to that, I'm going to take the equal. That's going to drive me crazy. Then what needs to have happen? Well, we need to move the ship up. So we're going to move the ship up by first coming up with float mount to move. And remember, we've set up a field that describes how fast the guy can move onto the screen. So let's use that. Ship move on speed, onto screen speed. And as I said earlier, we need to make sure that this guy is multiplied by delta time. And now let's turn around and use him. So we're going to use our transform.position. It's going to be equal to a new vector 3. As far as x goes, 0. We're not moving him left or right. And then as far as y goes, I'm going to take our current position, and I'm going to add to that position the little bit that we just came up with, an amount to move. And then finally for z, let's just keep z the way it is right now. So let's say that we get set to negative 5.5. And we come through here the very first time, and our amount to move, let's just say, is 0.1. So when we go to reposition this guy, he's going to stay zeroed in x. Negative 5.5 plus a positive 0.1 means negative 5.5 just became negative 5.4,
right.
Then 5.3, then 5.2, and we're slowly heading towards 0, or we're heading towards the smaller number of negative 3.2. So that now has us going back up. This is great, but we don't want all of this to take place in one tick. Yeah, that's not good. So what I'm going to do is come in here and yield, but I'm going to do something different. Up here you saw where I yielded for a predetermined amount of time. This time I'm just going to say yield return 0.
And what does that do?
This is going to simply yield us for 1 frame.
Okay.
So on the next tick, we're going to come back in here. Now, since we are multiplying our amount to move by delta time, we're getting that fractional value, so we're going to move up in such tiny little slices.
Right.
We're going to get a very smooth motion on the screen. So with this right here, we should be able to jump out now and watch ourselves slide back on screen. So let's go ahead and save, jump back over, hit play, and let's find somebody that's not centered, please. Hello. There we go. You work. So boom, off screen, slide back on screen.
Nice.
So that's what you're looking for, right?
That's exactly what I want.
All right. Part 1 done. Part 2, I can't move. I'm invincible.
You need to go back into a playing state.
So, well, close. So here we are. We've just come back on, but now we need to blink.
Oh, so you want to switch over to the invincible state
You got it.
first.
Now I want to become invincible.
I gotcha.
So let's change our state. So our state is now going to be equal to state.invincible. So the next thing, well, let's just go ahead and test. So by switching out our state right here, now we should be able to move and fire, but the enemy cannot hit us. Jump back over. Let's play. So destroy. Fire. Can't fire. Can't fire. Now I can fire.
Nice.
So as soon as I come back on, but let's try. Are we invincible?
Yes.
Absolutely. So the only thing we're missing is the blinking. So let's go ahead and turn this off. Jump back over here. And we can do this with another very simple loop. In this case, while. So with the while loop, we're going to continue doing this as long as what is inside our open and closing parentheses is true, as long as it evaluates to true. So I'm going to say while our blink count is less than the number of times to blink, that means we haven't blinked enough. We need to keep blinking. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle my current visibility. So if I'm visible, if I toggle it, that means I'll be invisible. If I am invisible and I toggle it, I'll become visible. So to do this, I'll simply go GameObject.renderer.enabled is equal to, and then I'll simply put a not in front of the same thing. And then terminate that, and let's talk about this. So let's say I'm coming in here, and this is true. Well, not true is false. So this would be set to false. Coming back in here the next time around, seeing how this is false, not false means it would be true. So that's true. Right. So we're toggling back and forth.
Yeah, we're cycling.
So keeping this nice and simple, all we need to do now is simply ask, okay, hey, did we just become visible? So if this is true, and of course I could take out the equals true and just leave the check in there. It's very simple, but we'll keep it very black and white here.
A little easier to read this
way. It is easier to read, I agree. So if it is true, then what do I want to do? Well,
increase the blink count.
You got it. I want to increase the blink count.
Because you're keeping track of that blink count.
Yep.
So.
And since that's the only thing that I want to do inside the if statement.
Don't need the brackets.
Nah, we'll take those out just to keep the code clean. Yeah. Okay. So now we're increasing with blink, but we need another yield. But the yield is going to go back to the kind we used before, where we were waiting for a certain amount of time. Because remember, we set that variable up at the top, that field, to tell us how long we're going to be on, how long we're going to be off, on, off, on, off. So let's just simply yield for that length of time. So I'll copy this line just to prevent from having to type it all out again. So still inside the while loop, the time that I'm looking to wait or to yield
is your blink rate.
Is going to be my blink rate.
Gotcha.
So blink rate. Make sense?
Yeah. That'll be 1/10 of a second. So we're going to cycle on and off for 1/10 of a second each time, and
so
keep track
we'll
of
go off for 1/10 of a second. We'll come back on for 1/10 of a second.
Yeah.
Off for, you got it. All right. So once we're done with this, let's make sure, this is so important, that we set our blink count back to zero. We need to reset it. If we don't reset it, blink count is still going to be at 10. And if it's sitting there at 10, what good is that going to do us?
Right.
So, because next time we come in, well, we're going to skip right over the blink part. And then the final thing we need to do is set ourselves back to playing, but we'll do that in a second. Let's go ahead and save, jump up here, hit play, and just see if we got some blinking action. So I'm moving around, woo, and now let's die. Death, slide on, blink, 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 and aha, very nice. And I can move, but I am still invincible.
So now you need to change your state back to playing.
You got it. Let's jump back over here. So our state equals our state dot playing.
Easy enough.
Now if I come back, hit play, everything should work beautifully. So let's find somebody over on one of the sides. Perfect. Death, can't move. And now I can move and shoot. And I was invincible, but let's prove it. So
no,
death.
You're not.
And invincible. Yep, you saw for a second.
Awesome.
So let me die again. Oh, that's going to be the end of the game. No, with that cool graphic. All right, death. Come back in. Blinking, and I can run over them.
Nice.
All right.
So, and with the timing of the asteroids, it's kind of nice because you get one free asteroid when you come in.
Yeah, you do.
And then that's it. You need to start playing again.
Woo-hoo. So, that's it.
Very nice.
We can do another quick video just to show how we can speed up our asteroids. But I think at this point we are just about to the finish line for our polished, simple game.
Yeah.
So with that, that is going to wrap up this video unless there are any questions.
No, sir.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys.